to Hockey Town. It's a place where dreams are found. We've fought so many battles here that we're the ones that never fear. The club resides within our town. We won't stop no letting down. The place is ours, we're all to drink. It's our time, let's rock this ring. Hockey Town.
Hello, and welcome to Splat and the Honolulu Blues. I am your host, Antonio Pop, and always I am joined by my good friend, Matt Pelage, and co-host. Today we have a very special guest with us. His career in the NHL spans 27 years. He has played 1,651 games in that career. He has contributed 948 points. He has played for teams like the Montreal Canadiens, the Chicago Blackhawks, and of course, your very own Detroit Red Wings. He is an NHL Hall of Famer, an 11-time NHL All-Star Game participant, and he has set multiple records for longevity in his career, including skating in more NHL playoff games than any other player with 268 games. He is an NCAA Division I champion, a 3-time Stanley Cup champion, a World Cup champion of hockey, and an Olympic silver medalist. It is during his tenure with the Detroit Red Wings, spanning from 1998 to 2009, that he captured his second and third titles. He is a 3-time James Norris Trophy winner and currently holds the most games played by an NHL defenseman. He is arguably the greatest American NHL defenseman to ever play the game. He is the one, the only, CHRIS CHELIOS.
Nice. Thank you.
Mr. Chelios, I just want to thank you for coming on today. It's a true honor to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you. First time on Zoom. Figured it out myself too.
Yeah, it's a really cool tool to use, especially during this COVID-19 situation.
Yeah.
Speaking of COVID-19, how's your family doing? I hope everyone's healthy.
Yeah, everyone's good. You know, I was fortunate enough to get my mother out to my sister's out in California
Oh, that's good.
a few months ago, and that was probably the biggest concern we had. As you know, it affects older people a lot more intense on them. But yeah, I have kids all over the map, Tampa, Chicago, but so far so good.
That's really good. That's really good. And we're all really concerned about this. And speaking of COVID-19, what are your thoughts on how the NHL has handled the COVID-19 crisis?
I mean, no one could have ever imagined, you know, it'd get to this point, the severity of the virus. So like everyone else, you know, it's kind of a day-to-day thing. You know, numbers will start determining whether it's on its way up, down, if we could somehow slow it down and start slowly getting back to real life. But, you know, at the end of the day, sports are should take a second seat in everything. You know, the economy's the most important thing in getting everybody back working. So, you know, I know they're working on schedules just in case, you know, things do come back quicker than expected. But there's no telling, you know, everybody wants to get back and everybody wants to be able to go to some events, but right now it's just, you know, everything's in limbo.
Yeah, definitely.
Mr. Chelios, I kind of want to take the conversation a little bit away from COVID-19 into more into your career. For you, what were the 3 most memorable moments of your career?
Well, making it, obviously, when I finished the Olympics in '84 and realizing that I'd made it to the NHL, playing my first game in the Montreal Forum. Really, it didn't have the expectations to make it as a pro. Just basically wanted to get a college degree, and everything just kind of went my way. And then to win the Stanley Cup, without a doubt, you know, very comparable to win the NCAA, but on a much larger scale, winning it in Montreal, that for sure was, you know, my top, you know, highlight. My second year winning the NHL or the Stanley Cup and having that parade in front of, you know, over 1 million people in Montreal. And then I think 17 years later, you know, being able to share that winning the cup in Detroit with my family. My sons were old enough to understand, my daughters, you know, at an age where they, you know, really will remember that the rest of their lives. So I got to see it in different decades and share it, you know, first as a single guy and just have fun. And then secondly, with my family and kids.
Yeah. Your kids have actually have become and deep in the NHL. Your daughter is a NHL broadcaster, and your two sons both play at Michigan State together, I believe. And then one actually made it all the way to the Detroit Red Wings. Tell us how you feel about that as a father.
Yeah. Well, they worked hard, like a lot of people do, and you watch kids, and there's just so many seats, right? And there's only so many spots. And for Jake to make it to where he did, that level, and Dean, playing in the minors in the East Coast League, it was great. They handled it very well. They're very respectful kids, and for Jake, I think it was a relief for him to know that he could play at that level. Unfortunately, he didn't stick, but he put his time in the American League 5 years, and to be able to play 5 games and said you make it, he was really happy. It was a load off his shoulders, and I never seen him smile that much, in that 10 days that he was up with the Detroit Red Wings. It was a great opportunity, and we loved every minute of it. And like you mentioned, my daughter, Kaylee's doing great as a female analyst in Tampa. She's expecting a baby any minute now, so that kind of puts a hold on her career. Yeah, thank you. First time as a grandpa, which is kind of weird, but and her sister Tara also played Division I lacrosse with her at Northwestern. So it was fun to watch all the kids, like any parent, to compete in anything, whether it's in a band or on a team. It's always fun to watch your kid to play sports or anything, and it's been a great ride with them.
Yeah, that I bet that'd be very exciting to watch. So, you're watching them play now, and you're watching the guys in the NHL play right now. And then you look back, when you were, their age, early 20s. How do you think the game has changed since then?
Well, I think the addition of the Europeans, obviously we play a skilled game as opposed to a North American style game, which we did, back in the 80s, 70s, 80s. And, that transition. And Detroit was probably one of the first teams to experience that with the Russian 5 guys and Scotty Bowman bringing that system of control, puck play, and possession, and just a really skilled game. And you saw how Stevie and even Drapes as a 4th line guy kind of, developed into those type of skilled players and puck possession players. And that's what you're seeing right now is that European, skill level that, North Americans have kind of adopted. Now, one of my sons, Jake, is probably a throwback, of old school in North America, where my other son, Dean, was a skill player. So it's, whatever you like. I'm North American. I prefer the old style of play, but it just depends who you ask, right? But it's, it's a great sport. It's a faster sport than it ever was. That's for sure.
Speaking of Mr. Steve, how do you think the rebuild's going so far?
Well, obviously, no one would have seen this coming. How disappointing the year they did have. I'm sure they'll tell you that. But Stevie doesn't have anything to prove. He's got a great staff with Verbeek, Drapes, a couple other guys, Yuri Fisher-Maltz, and it's going to take some time. He inherited a lot of contracts, and it's just the system is, it is what it is. And if anybody, is going to turn it around quick, it'll be Stevie. He has nothing to prove. You saw what he did with Tampa. You've seen what he's done with Canadian teams and the Olympics. And there's no one that works harder at it and takes it more serious than Steve. So, yeah, I think the fans are patient. I went to a few games this year. It was great. The crowd's into the games, and as bad as things had gone, the people are actually enjoying themselves. The new arena, that it's amazing. What the Illiches have done there. So, I'm looking for good things, but it's still going to take a couple years to get that thing going the right way.
Now, you've been in both arenas, the Joe and LCA. What is your favorite arena? Just by fan excitement and.
Yeah, I mean, I can compare it to anything. When I played in the old stadium in Chicago, there was no building that got any louder, and was a really great atmosphere for a home player to play in that atmosphere. And we moved to the United Center, and the team wasn't as good. It seemed like a dead building, but as soon as the Blackhawks started winning, you saw, there's not too many better places to watch a game now than the United Center. So, Little Caesars, the arena, they haven't had much to cheer about, the fans there. The Pistons aren't doing great either. But again, it takes winning. And once, the Wings can turn it around, that building is going to light up, and it's going to be a great place to watch a game, and you'll see that it'll just come to life. once that team gets on track.
Yeah. What,
Most
you know,
definitely.
speaking of, you know, the team, what do you think is like a realistic goal for next year?
Well, I think obviously they're in a lot of games, but you know it's just a little bit of their defense. They're beat up. You know they've got a lot of guys, young defensemen that are yeah. And you can remember back in the day when Datsuk or Zetterberg or any of those guys came up, they didn't get just throw them into the fire. They were able to bring them along because we had such a strong team and just kind of let them fit in and then finally mature and get some experience. They don't have that luxury now. You got young kids that are really skilled players, but the only way you learn is by making mistakes and going out there and getting better. So it just depends how quick these young kids can mature. They're going to get a great draft pick, hopefully an impact guy that can step right in. But, they've got some good young talent. The defense obviously is one of the big issues. And, Howie, depending on goaltending, you need a great goaltender to do anything.
Indeed. So we're going to transition back to your career. Now, you were a very physical player. When you went and hit someone, people noticed. When you fought someone, people noticed. Who is the one person that you would not want to fight against if you
Oh, boy, I
choose?
never did have to fight him. But the guy, Mark Messier, obviously you've heard of Mark Messier. He was probably one of the best all-around players where he can hurt you scoring, physically. He wasn't afraid to cross-check you in the face if he didn't like you. So he's probably the toughest guy, I think, all around and skilled player. You saw what he did with Edmonton. You saw what he did with the Rangers as a captain there. So without a doubt, Mess is one of the true leaders and great leaders of the game. One guy I'll honestly say I was scared of was probably Dale Hunter. You guys might not remember him. A little too young, but again, really talented player, but dirty as a son of a gun. And you never knew, what he was going to do. You're always aware when he was on the ice.
Then who is the best guy you ever fought?
I'd say Steve Casper because I beat the snot out of him every time I fought him. It's always fun to win. I fought him a lot because we had the big series, a rivalry against the Bruins back in the 80s. So we just happened to play them every playoffs. And that was kind of my heyday of, fighting when I first got in the league the first 4 or 5 years. Didn't fight too much in Detroit. We had such a good team. And I was never in a bad mood.
Yeah.
So speaking of good moments, what was one of your favorite, off the ice moments with your teammates?
The parades, I think if I think about Detroit, would it have to be someone just sent me a picture the other day of us with the Stanley Cup at my bar. Obviously, you're familiar with the bar I had downtown. And, being next to the ballpark, we had the Tigers at our party, the fans. There wasn't an inch of room in there once we bring that cup in there. And just to celebrate with the people in the parking lot and the bar. And I think someone sent me a picture of Dallas Drake and Yuri Hudler throwing a cup full of beer with the Stanley Cup and dousing everybody. But that was probably the highlight, off the ice that I think that my teammates, no one's ever, and the fans that were there, are never going to forget that.
Now, in Montreal, when you won your first cup, when you lifted that above your head, what was your first reaction? What first thought that came to your head? It
was relief. I've always said I never enjoyed winning as much as I hated losing. It was just a relief to win it. It happened quick, in my career, my second year. So that part was great. I didn't have to wait too long. I never did get a chance to put it over my head on the ice after we'd won it in Calgary, but in the dressing room, I distinctly remember it because I have that picture, finally getting a hold of it in the dressing room and lifting it over your head. So yeah, it was amazing. And the fact that I did it in Montreal, I really understood the meaning and, the tradition of the history of the Canadians of winning the cup. I didn't think it was going to be that hard. The next 17 years I didn't win it. I thought I'd win 5 or 6 of them, to be honest with you, but it's not easy. And, there's a reason why guys don't win, that many.
Yeah, indeed. I've heard rumors you're known as one of the hardest workers in the weight room off ice. I heard a rumor that you used to take a stationary bike and bring it in a sauna and used to pedal. Is that true?
Yeah, I'd like to think I invented that, kind of like Rocky when he was hitting that cow in the slaughterhouse. So I think I just did it as when you sweat, they say sweating is the healthiest thing for you. And I'd like to go warm up. At first, I just liked warming up in the sauna with the bike, and afterwards for I guess you'd call it a lactic wash. Afterwards you're supposed to ride the bike, or when you get off a plane, try and sweat somehow to get those lactics out of you. And riding a bike is the easiest way to do it. It doesn't get you in any better shape, but it does get rid of those toxics and the lactic acids from the food and anything you take in your body. It's similar to when you get the flu and you're laying in bed and you start sweating. It's just that's your body naturally gets rid of that stuff through sweating.
Yeah.
I'm no doctor, but I keep it simple, and it makes sense to me.
Yeah. Mr. Chelios, I got another question for you. Was there one song that you always listened to pregame? Did you have like a tradition like that you do pregame, or?
No, not one particular song. When we started, I was kind of in control of music in Detroit anyway, of playing the music, and I thought I did a pretty good job DJing. But as I got older and the young guys started taking over the stereo with their bippity bop music, I didn't like that too much. But especially that Russian type music. But if I was to pick a group, honestly, and I think back when we won the cups, a lot of Kid Rock, a lot of Pearl Jam, and a lot of Eminem. That's what we were playing back, in the day. It got the guys going, and for that reason being that when you win the cup, you stick with the same music, so it kind of carried over.
Yeah. Definitely. Did you guys have like a lucky tradition or something that you do for good luck or anything?
I wasn't very superstitious, no, but if you watch some guys, like Drapes had some things going with malts, and I think you guys saw that as they went on the ice, and Darren McCarty had a little ritual he went through with some guys. And me in particular, no, but guys did do some things. And, I guess the only thing I didn't do would be like change my suit or my tie on a win. Like I was a little superstitious about clothes, not changing them. So, but everybody had their little quirks, putting their sticks down in a certain, area and stuff like that. But I wasn't ever real superstitious about that.
Now, so our viewers really don't know how the minors, like how big the buildings were. Did the crowds ever make difference in how you approach the game, or did they ever get into your head like, oh my God, we're playing in front of X amount of people as your career went on?
Every building, if you look at Madison Square Garden, that was a great place to play, and it wasn't an advantage to the home team because the visiting teams also got revved up by that. Philadelphia, a real tough place to play. Their fans are vicious. Probably, I think everybody knows they're the worst fans and ruthless fans there are. But a lot of buildings, you go to Florida and it's mostly Wings fans. You go to Arizona, it's mostly Wings fans. So we had a great following. Even in Canada, the Wings had such a following, just being one of the favorite teams because of how good they were and the group of guys that they had. So, just like I said, it depended a lot, but most of the time, when I was even with this Chicago, we were such a good team back in the 90s, early 90s. Buildings were coming to see us play, even the visiting team, arena. So it was pretty good for us. We had it good.
Nice. So what would you say Philadelphia was the loudest arena, or would you say that?
No, I wouldn't necessarily say the loudest, but for some reason like I said, the stuff coming out of their mouths was amazing. And like, I won't repeat it on your podcast or our interview here, but yeah, they're just known, like they start fights in the crowds. And I think you guys might not remember that guy ended up in the penalty box with Ty Domi, and Ty Domi, laid a beating on him. So they're just crazy. Like East Coast fans are a little bit, intense.
Yeah. Would you say that is the craziest fan experience that you've had to endure? Was there any other crazy fan experiences?
Well, watching, I guess if I look back in the 70s, your age, you guys wouldn't remember this possibly, but when the Boston Bruins, 6 or 7 of the players on the Bruins went in the crowd and started beating guys, with their shoes, that was the craziest thing. Somewhat like the Pistons, that whatever they called that, when the Pistons had that brawl out at the Palace. That was crazy. Yeah. I was at that game actually. So those were the two-est things I remember when the fans actually got into it with the players.
So I guess they must have saw you and thought, maybe I shouldn't fight that guy. Maybe I should find someone else.
I never went into the crowd. Not in pros anyway. It happened in college in Minnesota. We ended up fighting the fans, and because of the way it was set up when you left the ice, the fans actually got to us. But other than that, never interacted like that with the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. What was one of the kind of like the funniest moments of your career that you kind of look back at now and kind of still laugh at?
Without a doubt, my first game on the road in Buffalo, and I was in warm-ups and I was skating around shooting the puck into the net, and I was one of the last guys leaving the ice, and I shot the puck in the net and I watched the puck go in, and as I left the ice, I mistakenly went out through the Zamboni doors, and the Zamboni driver pushed me, and I ended up getting in a fight with the Zamboni driver, and the police had to come break it up, and I ended up being best friends with this guy later over my career. Yeah, it was amazing.
Hilarious.
But yeah, that was the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life, and the fight a Zamboni driver was kind of stupid.
Now, I know in the NHL today, it's a tradition to kind of prank the rookies. Was that a tradition back in your day, or was it?
Oh, yeah. Well, they called it hazing. Obviously, you guys know what hazing is, and now they've pretty much cut that out to the extent of what we went through as rookies in the 80s. We had 6 or 7 rookies in our team, and they shaved our heads bald or somewhat bald with horse clippers, and it hurt amazingly. I can't tell you other things that they did, but there was people in junior hockey that quit hockey because of the hazing or the initiation. And I believe the year after it happened to me, the next generation, we had some fights. One of the couple of the rookies fought the veterans, literally fist fight, and that was the end of hazing and rookie initiations. It just stopped in 1986, I believe, because a guy named John Kordick and Shane Corson decided they were going to fight. And, we said, okay, took about 7 guys to hold them down, but, we got them.
So speaking of, eras, the 80s, 90s, or when you played in the 2000s, what was your favorite? Did you have a favorite era to play in?
Like I said, my days in Montreal were great just because we had a good team. And when you're winning, there's no better place to be than a city in Canada because you get treated like God. You don't wait in lines at the movie theaters. It's amazing. But when you're losing, you can't hide. But, my first 6-7 years in Montreal, I'd never been to Montreal, so I really didn't know that's how it was until, 1 month into playing there. I'm going, oh my God, this is like being on the New York Yankees or like the Dallas Cowboys. It was just, they put you on that level. And to me, that was amazing. And it was kind of nice when I got traded to Chicago because you could just kind of blend in. You could walk around the city and not be noticed. And I enjoyed that also. But, that first 6-7 years in Montreal, never a dull moment. People were, I was lucky. The people liked me, really gracious. And it was the greatest, time of my career.
Absolutely. So, you played for the Canadians, Red Wings, Blackhawks. What is your favorite NFL team, or NBA team? Are you like a favorite to one of those cities, or are you kind of like your own man? You like a different?
Well, I grew up in Chicago, and I know people in Detroit just probably still don't want to hear it, but I always been a Chicago sports fan. So the Bears, I grew up in the era with Dick Butkus, Doug Buffone. I got to see the 86 Bear team or 85 Bear team win the Super Bowl with Jim McMahon, Walter Payton, the Fridge. So I'm a big Chicago sports fan, Cubs, Sox. But the fact that I was in Detroit for 20 years, I always cheered for the Lions. I always cheered for the Tigers. That's a home team. But whenever a Detroit team would play a Chicago team, I had to pull for Chicago. That's just it's my home. So, but again, I think everybody understood that, and I would never rub it in. I'd never wear a Cubs hat to Comerica Park. I'd never, I don't do stupid things like that, even though it's my team. But out of respect, I don't do that.
Yeah. Now, growing up, did you just play hockey or did you play multiple sports like in high school? And
yeah, back then you were allowed to play multiple sports. Now, most sports are year round, the training, but I played a lot of baseball, right up till I was 17. And I like baseball better than hockey, to be honest with you. I was a pitcher. And I just moved. Our family moved to California, and that kind of shouldn't have ended my career in baseball, but it did. And I just started skating out there just for fun, and it's a long story, but I ended up meeting some guy on a beach and ended up where I did. So, but yeah, I played football, but for about 2 months, but the season, was interfered with hockey. I couldn't do both. So, baseball and hockey there, it was the right time in the seasons that I could do both. And I really enjoyed, both of them.
Nice. So, you mentioned you were a pitcher. Were you like a fastball guy, like you could throw it really hard or blow it by? Or were you more of an off-speed guy, like you could get some?
I was like a Greg Maddux tactical, I was a very smart pitcher. I was small, I didn't really grow till I got out of high school. So I could put the ball wherever I wanted. Basically only had 2 pitches, but they're, where I want them to put them every time. So I don't think I lost more than 3-4 games my whole career, up till 17 years old as a pitcher. And I kind of believe that I pitched against one kid, we rivaled each other till I was 17, and he ended up making it to the pros. So, I mean, everything happens for a reason, and I obviously lasted longer in hockey than I ever imagined I could. But baseball, like I said, I loved it.
Yeah. That's a pretty cool story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of transitioning back to the NHL. This is a little bit of a roundtable question. Who are you liking to win the cup this year? Who do you think is going to win the cup?
Man, I mean, you look at the teams like Boston, how they've held it together and maintained that level for years now, been to the finals, won cup. So, I think Boston would have been one of the front runners. Tampa, you have your doubts because of what happened last year to them, that early exit after absolutely dominating the regular season. But St. Louis, look at them again. They're strong. If I was to pick from the West, it'd definitely have to be St. Louis. In the East, yeah, who knows? Washington, Pittsburgh still right there, Boston, Tampa. That's a tough call.
Yeah. Personally, I kind of like Boston. I think I'm a big believer in the philosophy. Like if your goalie's really good, it's really tough to beat you. And Tuukka Rask is just a beast this year. I mean, the way he's phenomenal. So I like Boston. I think offensively they can really do some damage too.
Yeah, and they got a big, strong team. Those big physical teams, at the end of the day, they still seem to be the ones going deep in the playoffs.
I had a question for you. What did you think when you first saw Chara? Was he like 7 feet tall, right?
You might as well be. It's a different 6'9" or 7 feet. Yeah. No, you know what? Everything. I actually met him for the first time and had a conversation for the first time ever. I ran into him in a dressing room when Boston had just played Chicago about a month ago, and I've heard nothing but good things about him. I tried to run into him one time and hit him. You can't move him. Like, he's that big. But from everything I hear, he's one of the greatest team guys in the world. He's just all about the team. He's a very respectful kid. He's been one of my favorites over the years. I'd love to see him keep going at his age. He still is a very important part of that team.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Pop? What do you think's going to win the cup this year?
I think the Washington Capitals. I really think Alexander Ovechkin can do it again. I really do. He is just an unbelievable talent.
Yeah, you can't bet against him. That's for sure. As long as they stay healthy. But hope to God there is going to be a playoff. But it's not looking too good right now.
Indeed. So we're going to transition more back to the Red Wings, and this is actually a roundtable question. So the Red Wings captain, the C, has been vacant for about 2 years, ever since Henrik Sandberg retired. Who do you think will take up the mantle on the current team of captain?
I think Larkin. Maybe they didn't want to give it to him because he was too young. But he's got a really good head on his shoulders, and he works hard. He plays both ends. He's a good kid. He speaks well with the media. He's a local kid. So I just think Blash felt it was too much of a burden to put on him. I know when I was named captain the first time in Montreal, I wasn't ready for it, and it really affected the way I played. And to be honest with you, I failed miserably as a captain when I was, I think he's ready now. He's matured, and he'd be my first pick for sure.
Same here. He's just a great guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he went to high school right down the road from Antonio and I, so it's kind of cool to see him kind of go from that high school level all the way up to now. You know, he's like the star player of the Wings right now. So
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a dream come true to be able to play for the team you grew up, cheering for. So I was in the same situation in Chicago. So, Lark's, like I said, he's a good kid, really stand-up kid, and I know the guys like him.
yeah, absolutely. So I think that is going to do it. So Mr. Chelios, I cannot thank you enough for coming on. It's truly awesome to finally talk to you. I grew up watching you as a kid, so it's
Thank you. Yeah.
any,
Well, it's a pleasure. I'm sorry?
any closing remarks?
Well, obviously wish everybody in Michigan the best, going through this crisis. And like anything else, if we stick together, we're going to get through it, and business as usual, hopefully sooner than later, and we can get back to our lives. But for the time being, you just got to stick together. No sense blaming anybody. It's time to just move forward and help each other out. So all the best to Detroit. Miss you guys. Still got my place there, so I'm back and forth.
Love
and
that.
It's good to see my old teammates and friends and catch a Tigers game or a Wings game. So all the best to everybody. Thanks for all the great memories.
You're welcome. And one last question: what are you doing now, like in hockey? What have you been coaching or?
No, I actually, because of the travel, and I played so long, I didn't want to. I had a chance to watch Jake and Dean play, and my daughters play their lacrosse at Northwestern. So, I love coaching, and I've done a few Olympics and some World Junior teams, but it's just a grind. I can't do 80 games to travel. Now I'm in an ambassador role. That's pretty much what I did in Detroit, visiting suites and shaking hands and sponsors. And now I'm doing that with Chicago. That's my current, job is with the Blackhawks. And I moved back to take care of my mom. She's older. My dad passed. So just seeing her a lot's been great. So, and then I love my free time. So I've been surfing, snowboarding, all that stuff that young kids do, which I never had the chance to do.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you
so anyway, all you guys, good luck. All the best of your career here. Like I said, my daughter, I've watched her in the last 4 years grow into being a heck of a TV analyst and radio analyst. So it's a great field to be in for sure. Most
definitely. We're really excited about this, opportunity to do this. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And thank you again for coming on today. It's what a true honor to interview you and hear all the great stories about championships and just those tiny moments that our fans really want to, look at in an NHL player's career. Yeah. Well, thank you. You guys did a great job. Thank you. All right, you, Chris. Take care. Yeah, you bet. Bye. Bye-bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that hockey episode with Chris Chelios. That was really cool to have him on. Remember, our episode on baseball, our first ever baseball episode is going to be on Tuesday, so make sure to tune in for that. And as always, remember, stay healthy. And stay classy.